not have the answer. Socialism does not have the answer. Capitalism does not have the answer. The answer is found in the hope of God. And we begin that hope by drinking from that water from which we will never thirst again. The hope that brings the promise of life. God is our unfailing source of consolation. Isn't that a refreshing thought? It sure is for me. Then we come down to verses 8 through 11. Come and see the works of the Lord, the desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Point number 3 is God is a mighty power. God is a mighty power. And the psalmist says, come and see what God has done. And then giving them a vision to the future, he says that God has broken the bows and crushed the spears. If we look at what God has done, we can look at it from several different angles. We can look at what God has done in the history of his book, and we have to do that to really understand who God is. When we do that, we see who God is and how he functions and what he expects. He is a mighty power. And then we can look at the way that God has worked in our individual lives. Look how God has worked in your life. Look how he has brought you through the despairing days of life. Look how he has brought you through the dark winters of your own soul. What great advice it is for us to come and see what God has done. Because God is faithful. And he is mighty in power. He is our hope. He is our refuge. He is our strength. He is our consolation. To wrap this up, we look at verses 10 and 11. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. That verse 10 is a very beautiful verse. The psalmist says, be still and know that I am God. When the world rages around you, when everything that you had any measure of hope in begins to crumble, when you don't know which way to turn, when you are anxious, the anxiety mounts, when you are nervous and you cannot sleep, when you don't know which way to turn, the psalmist says, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. The other night I was tossing and turning in bed, and I said to myself, Wes, why in the world can't you go to sleep? And so I took a look at my own, myself, and my shoulders were tensed up like I was so tense that if you'd have hit me with a hammer, I'd have broken. And I thought, there's no wonder you can't go to sleep. You've got yourself keyed up to the point where there's no relaxation in your body at all. You ever been like that? When we're still, I don't know if you ever thought about this or not, but the idea of being still, if you look at the original language, it's my understanding that it literally means to relax, to be calm, and to understand that when you are not able, that God is able. Think about that. Sometimes we have to take some deep breaths. Sometimes we have to force ourselves to relax our hands and our arms and our shoulders and our legs and our back. Make yourself relax. calm your spirits, calm your soul. And remember, when things are hopeless, God is our hope. When you have a problem that you can't do anything about, God can do something about it. When you are unable, God is able. And then the psalmist says, be still and know that I am God. You know, ties in with what we said there in point number 3 of the message. When we look at the evidence does not just suggest, but it powerfully shouts that God is able. That our God deals in things that we think are impossible. When we come up against a wall that we can't scale, God can scale it or punch a hole through it. When we think that we have come to a river that we can't swim, God can take us to the other side. When we think we've come up against personalities and opposition and enemies that we can't handle, God can handle it. He can break the bows and crush the spears. The scripture says that nations melt before him. That's what it says. Nations melt before him. Be still and know that I am God. You know, I wouldn't even pretend to say that I had the quote political answers to our problems, because I don't. Wouldn't even pretend to have it. I've got some pretty strong opinions, and I've got some pretty strong ideas, but you probably don't want to hear them anyway. I've got some real strong. Always, she has to hear them. Well, she has to hear them. I have to tell somebody. And so she has to hear them, but I'm not going to share them with you. You don't want to hear it anyway. But here's what I do realize, that when the sin problem is taken care of, when that's taken care of, then you know what? Even when we have differing opinions, we can treat each other kindly and with respect. We can sit down and have a conversation. We don't always have to agree, but when we get up from that conversation, we can still be friends. But we've forgotten all that. And the reason that we've forgotten all that is because we've forgotten God. We've forgotten God. That's the problem. That's the problem. Well, that's all I'm going to say about that. And so let's stand and sing our closing hymn, Just As I Am. If you have a decision that you need to make, come as we sing together.